Greetings, everybody. Readout Productions here. And if you have followed my channel over the years, you probably put two and two together that I'm based out of the Laurel Highlands region of southwestern Pennsylvania, which I'm a little biased. I think is one of the most historically important regions of the United States of America. And one way to show how important this region is to our national history is that there are 5 national parks located in the Laurel Highlands. And we've actually explored all of them in episodes of Retracing History. But I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of create a bit of a travel guide for people coming to the Laurel Highlands for the first time, or frequent flyers through the region, or even people who live here regularly, like yours truly, to give you a bit of a debriefer about the 5 national parks you can explore. Because all 5 national parks in the Laurel Highlands are based on historical preservation. Now, to be technical, 2 of those national parks are really just out of the boundaries of what some consider the Laurel Highlands. We'll talk about that in a moment, though. So here are the 5 national parks you can explore when you're coming to Pennsylvania's Laurel Highlands. Our first stop is FortNecessity National Battlefield. This national park is devoted to preserving the grounds on which the early phases of the French and Indian War were waged upon. This conflict was ignited in the summer of 1754 when an armed force from the British colony of Virginia attempted to establish an outpost at modern-day Pittsburgh. French and Amerindian forces would contest that movement, leading to 2 battles before they forced the young British-American officer to surrender. That officer happened to be a 22-year-old George Washington, and his surrender after the Battle of FortNecessity would be a powerful lesson both in military service as well as politics. Though a terrible day for his self-esteem, the war he had set in motion would ultimately be won by the British Empire. However, the debt that was incurred from nearly a decade of fighting led to the raising of taxes upon the British American colonies. This, as well as treaties with Amerindian tribes, which conflicted with the aspirations of British American colonists like Washington, would set in motion the American Revolution. One can make the argument that the United States of America was conceived not by America's finest civic leaders in Independence Hall, but rather in the woods of the Laurel Highlands, thanks to the naivete of George Washington and his first military command. FortNecessity National Battlefield is made up of 3 different units to give a complete exploration of Washington's only military surrender. Best place to begin is at the Interpretive and Education Center. Opened in 2005, this facility does a wonderful job in introducing visitors to the background of the French and Indian War, the events that transpired on the park grounds, and the direct role the military infrastructure Washington was establishing would have upon the Laurel Highlands, even into the present day. It's a multimedia experience, complete with genuine artifacts and lifelike figures of key players and locations. There's a fantastic orientation film that brings the history to life within a 20-minute time frame, as well as a bookstore you'll want to stop by before departing. The main unit of the park is the battlefield itself. While the property is called FortNecessity, understand that word, necessity. You will not find an impressive fortress here. Rather, the fort was a small circular stockade built in haste by the Virginians to guard their lone storeroom. Much of the actual fighting was done in the earthworks that surrounded the stockade, while the French and Amerindians occupied the tree line. In the summer months, a variety of programs are offered, ranging from guided tours of the battlefield to living history programming, where you will learn about all 3 sides that took part in the battle. Also situated in the northern perimeter of the battlefield unit is the Mount Washington Tavern. Although unrelated to the battle itself, this tavern explores the evolution of the military road Washington was attempting to build. In 1818, the U.S. government approved funding for their first federally funded road network, which became known as the National Road, and it passed by the site of FortNecessity. The tavern is open seasonally and interprets life along the National Road in the 19th century. But FortNecessity was not the first shots of the French and Indian War. That distinction is preserved at the park's second unit, 7 miles northwest of the Education Center. Jumonville Glen can be accessed seasonally by a parking lot with rustic restrooms. A 3/4 mile hike that starts on a paved trail but soon descends into a rough slide delivers visitors to the cliff facing where the French and Indian War actually commenced. Although the forest is new growth, There are no modern obstructions in sight save for informational panels, making this one of the best places to truly feel like what it would have been to be young George Washington at the cusp of this conflict. The final unit interprets the British Crown's response to Washington's surrender. In 1755, General Edward Braddock led a British army of some 2,000 soldiers toward modern-day Pittsburgh in the hopes of taking the French outpost there. His poor understanding of wilderness warfare led to a disastrous defeat for the British. The battle is known simply as Braddock's defeat, and the general was mortally wounded. Ironically, he died just across the hill from the scene of the mess he had been sent to clean up. This unit features a large monument upon the presumed remains of Braddock, as well as a preserved stretch of the military road his army used on that doomed campaign. FortNecessity National Battlefield has plenty to offer to fill out a day. All ages should enjoy detailed interpretive and education center exhibits and the opportunity to walk in the footsteps of George Washington in multiple locations. Next up is Friendship Hill National Historic Site. Albert Gallatin is a name most Americans are unfamiliar with in the 21st century, but was an integral component in maintaining our country beyond its conception. A Swiss immigrant who landed in America while the Revolutionary War was ongoing, he was encouraged to emigrate by the promise of the Declaration of Independence. Dissatisfied with the cities of New England, he found his home on the western frontier in what is now Pennsylvania's Fayette County. With his family's inheritance, he expanded his property into a 400-acre estate named Friendship Hill. This was his primary residence when he entered states and eventually federal politics. In 1801, President Thomas Jefferson appointed Gallatin as Secretary of the Treasury of the United States, a position he would hold longer than any other individual. His lasting legacy would be overseeing the Louisiana Purchase, which doubled the size of the country, while amending previous fiscal policies to reduce the nation's debt. He would also be part of the American Commission that negotiated the end of the War of 1812. The park offers numerous hiking trails to enjoy the grounds, just as Gallatin would have 2 centuries ago. The centerpiece of the property remains the house, which has grown from the time that Gallatin lived here. The house's interior is rather sparse in terms of displays, as the chief artifact is the building itself. Through the various additions Gallatin had established during his occupancy, one could learn about key events that shaped himself and the country. Also on site is a mysterious grave that nobody is precise on who's interred there. Some say Gallatin's first wife, others say a prized racing horse from a later property owner. Friendship Hill National Historic Site is just north of the Pennsylvania-West Virginia border near Point Marion, Pennsylvania. When driving to the location, it does feel out of the way from the other attractions within the region. But if you are an architect enthusiast, want a breathtaking view of the Laurel Highlands, or are curious about the longest tenured Secretary of the Treasury, consider making the trek to this important landmark. Alright, we're switching gears now. We're going from talking about toll roads, and we're going to be switching into talking about kind of railroads. We're talking about the Allegheny Portage Railroad National Historic Site. Pennsylvania enjoyed the revenue it received from passengers and freight moving on its toll roads since the American Revolution. But by the 1820s, the smooth canal systems in New York and along the Potomac River threatened to bypass Pennsylvania altogether. A plan was devised to build a canal across the Commonwealth. But to have canal boats navigate the Allegheny Mountains, an ingenious system of railways and inclined planes was devised to lug them over the peak. Consisting of 10 inclined planes powered by stationary steam engines, 36 miles of rail, and the country's first railroad tunnel, the Allegheny Portage Railroad was an engineering marvel, finished in just a few years. Operating for 2 decades, it maintained Pennsylvania's part in westward expansion, while developing numerous innovations that would go on to progress the country for the rest of the 19th century. The National Historic Site preserves the infrastructure that remains from the Allegheny Portage Railroad. The main unit of the park stretches from the summit of Allegheny Mountain, near Crescent, Pennsylvania, to the eastern foot near Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania. The Visitor Center offers recently upgraded exhibits featuring dioramas and full-scale replicas of the railroad's infrastructure. Several of the exhibits are specially designed to be interactive for all ages. There's also an orientation film that, while it does show its age a little, still does a great job in explaining to visitors the unique operations over the Allegheny summit. A short hike from the Visitor Center leads visitors to the number 6 Incline Engine House Shelter. The white building protects the foundations of the original engine house that sat at the highest point on the line, with a reconstruction of the pulley system needed to lug the canal boats over the peak. There are additional interactive exhibits that allow all ages to explore the physics behind the incline planes. On the opposite side of the engine house is an old inn known as the Lemon House. This facility was in operation during the railroad's lifespan, providing food and beverages as passengers waited for their train to be transferred between the incline and rod locomotives. If you visit in the summer months, you will likely meet a living historian demonstrating the trades necessary to build and operate the Allegheny Portage Railroad. For those up for hiking, there are two prominent trails that retrace the right-of-way down the mountain. The first ascends toward Hollidaysburg, known as the 6 to 10 Trail. Portions of this trail, 8 to 12 mile hike, are rugged and steep as it's navigating the eastern inclined plains. You may also choose the 4-mile round trip to explore the Stable Bend Tunnel. This is a separate unit of the park, located 5 miles northeast of Johnstown, Pennsylvania. The trek is worth it as you will discover numerous vestiges of the old railroad, including stone sleepers and culverts, culminated in traveling through America's very first railroad tunnel. With 2 main units preserving elements of the old right-of-way, the Allegheny Portage Railroad National Historic Site surprises its visitors with a wide range of activities that one may assume coming from a railroad that is no longer in existence. Our next park actually began life as part of the Pennsylvania Main Line Canal. In 1854, a reservoir was constructed 14 miles northeast of Johnstown, Pennsylvania to maintain adequate water for the canal system. However, this reservoir is not noted for its role in transportation, but for being the linchpin of the worst disaster during America's Gilded Age. The reservoir was modified into a large lake as the centerpiece of the private South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club. Several of America's wealthiest individuals vacationed here, spending their resources in entertainment rather than maintenance of the earthen dam. During a severe rainstorm on May 31, 1889, the dam failed and released the 3-mile-long lake into the valley below. When it was all over 2,000 people were dead, with multiple communities wiped off the map. The catastrophe marked the first major relief effort by the Red Cross, allowing for Johnstown to be fully rebuilt. In terms of acreage, this is the smallest national park in southwestern Pennsylvania. It centers upon preserving the ruins of the Fishing and Hunting Club, which caused the calamity. A visitor center overlooking the former lake provides guests an overview on the Johnstown flood. The exhibits show wear from age, but remain practical in interpreting the events of May 31, 1889. Highlights include a towering diorama depicting the flood wall and a terrifying orientation film. Interpretive signs mark both abutments of the former dam, with trails leading to their edges as well as descending through the breach, which allows visitors to fully appreciate the scale of destruction. Recently, the Park Service undertook a brush clearing project to provide a better vantage of the lake bed itself. You'd also take a chance to drive the short distance to the modern community of St. Michael, which is built around the surviving structures of the old Fishing and Hunting Club. None of the structures are open for regular public visit, and most of the cottages are now private property, but it is worth to see where some of America's most influential individuals once gathered and formed relationships that both built and damaged the country by the turn of the 20th century. The last park we're going to visit is both the largest and most recently established national park in the Laurel Highlands, and it's dedicated to protecting the crash site of United Airlines Flight 93. This was one of 4 planes hijacked by Al-Qaeda terrorists on September 11, 2001. Flight 93 stands out as the only one of the 4 planes that day to not reach its target. The popular story goes that with the use of plane and cell phones, passengers and crew on board were able to piece together what the true motivations of the hijackings were. They decided to try and retake control over the plane, leading to a crash landing in a strip mine in Somerset County, Pennsylvania. All 40 passengers and crew, along with the hijackers, were killed in the ensuing crash. But the remote location in which Flight 93's final moments played out allowed for the most complete recovery of information relating to one of the 4 hijacked planes, helping federal authorities piece together who was involved in planning the deadliest terrorist attack in U.S. history. Today, the strip mine which Flight 93 nosedived into has been reclaimed, turned into a nature preserve. Visitors should begin at the Visitor Center overlooking the crash site, which helps to interpret the events of September 11th as they transpired both locally and nationally. To access the memorial wall located near the crash site, visitors may either hike a 1.5-mile trail or drive a parallel road on the same length. There is also a half-mile trail which leads you to the original memorial site, which served the park for its first decade of operation. On your way out of the park, you are also encouraged to visit the Tower of Voices. Located near the entrance on US Route 30, this 93-foot-tall tower holds wind chimes to represent the lost voices of each passenger and crew on board the flight that day. Park rangers also host a variety of programs to educate visitors on the events that transpired there, as well as the lives of those lost on board Flight 93. If there is a national park someone passing through the Laurel Highlands plans to visit, it's usually this one, due to its easy access off of a major road, as well as many people's familiarity with the September 11th attacks. As such, if you do plan to visit on your way through the region, be prepared for large crowds. There is ample parking, but believe me when I say the crowd size here compared to other Fort parks is a polar opposite. Although much of it is outdoors, there is enough shelter at the Visitor Center and head of Memorial Plaza to allow someone the advantage of viewing the site without getting soaked on a rainy day. So there you have it, 5 national parks that you can visit while you're exploring Pennsylvania's Laurel Highlands. Hopefully this travel guide of sorts will allow you to narrow down, if you only have time for maybe 1 or 2 of those sites, which ones you want to see. Or hey, maybe you just discovered a site you never knew about before and you're getting in the car and going to it right now. If you want to see more in-depth coverage of these 5 national parks, I have featured them in episodes of Retracing History. You've probably actually been seeing them linked in the upper right-hand corner of this video. So consider, if you're not able to come here in person to see these national parks, consider watching those episodes of Retracing History to delve into the stories of Fort Necessity National Battlefield, of Friendship Hill, of the Johnstown Flood National Memorial, the Allegheny Portage Railroad, and the Flight 93 National Memorial. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button down below. If you want to follow us in our future adventures, consider subscribing here to Readout Productions. And if you want to go the extra mile and supporting us, you can go to our Ko-fi page, links in the description below, where you become members of the Garrison, which is our monthly membership program. So for a small monthly fee, you'll get access to behind-the-scenes footage, select scripts to videos, early access to select videos, and I'm always trying to make new bonuses as we grow the Garrison. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.